problem of evil, logical and evidential. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, then why does evil exist in the world? A truly benevolent and omnipotent being should be able to prevent suffering while still achieving a greater good. Yet we see natural disasters, diseases, and human-caused atrocities that cause immense suffering. The logical problem of evil claims that the existence of an all-good God is incompatible with evil. The evidential problem of evil argues that even if God and evil could theoretically coexist, the vast amount of suffering in the world makes God's existence highly unlikely. Defenders of theism suggest that suffering has a greater purpose, such as free will or soul-building. However, this does not explain why an all-powerful God allows seemingly pointless or extreme suffering, such as childhood cancer or natural disasters. Many conclude that a world with so much suffering is more consistent with atheism than theism. The problem of divine hiddenness. If God desires a relationship with humans, why does he remain hidden from many sincere seekers? Throughout history, countless people have searched for God, but received no clear sign of his existence. If a loving God existed, he would ensure that every person had access to undeniable proof of him. The fact that many intelligent and honest people remain atheists or agnostics suggests that God's existence is not self-evident. Some believers argue that faith is necessary, but this seems contradictory. Why would a loving God demand belief without sufficient evidence? Others say God reveals himself in subtle ways, but this does not account for those who never experience these revelations. A perfectly loving God would not allow sincere seekers to remain in doubt, especially if eternal consequences were at stake. The widespread doubt and religious diversity suggest that either God does not exist or does not care about being known. The incoherence of omniscience and free will. If God knows everything, including the future, then human free will is an illusion. For example, if God already knows what choices you will make tomorrow, can you truly make a different choice? If you cannot, then your actions are predetermined, contradicting the idea of free will. If you can, then God does not truly know the future, which contradicts his supposed omniscience. Some theists argue that God's knowledge does not force decisions, but if the outcome is already known, there is no real possibility of change. This creates a contradiction between divine foreknowledge and genuine free will. If human choices are predetermined, then moral responsibility becomes questionable. A God who punishes people for actions they were destined to take seems unjust. Contradictory divine attributes. Many of God's traditionally defined attributes seem to contradict each other. If God is all-powerful, can he create a rock so heavy that he cannot lift it? If he can, then he is not truly all-powerful. And if he cannot, then he is not truly all-powerful either. Similarly, if God is perfectly just and perfectly merciful, how can he punish sinners while also forgiving them unconditionally? Omniscience and omnipotence also seem incompatible. If God knows everything, including what he will do in the future, he cannot change his mind, which limits his power. An unchanging God also contradicts the idea of a personal being who interacts with the world and responds to prayers. Some theologians argue that divine attributes are beyond human understanding, but this does not resolve the logical contradictions. A being with self-contradictory attributes cannot logically exist. If the traditional concept of God is incoherent, then it is unlikely such a being exists. The argument from inconsistent revelations. Religious experiences and holy texts vary drastically across cultures and contradict one another. Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and other religions all claim divine truth, yet they offer vastly different descriptions of God and moral teachings. If one religion were divinely inspired, we would expect it to be universally evident, rather than limited by geography and culture. Instead, religious belief is heavily influenced by where a person is born. If an all-powerful God wanted to communicate clearly, why allow so many conflicting revelations? Religious diversity suggests that these beliefs are human constructs rather than divine truths. Some argue that God allows different paths to him, but many religions explicitly contradict each other on key doctrines. The vast number of mutually exclusive religious claims makes it more plausible that none of them are divinely inspired. The argument from naturalism. Science has continuously provided natural explanations for phenomena once attributed to God. Thunder, diseases, and even human consciousness were once thought to be divine mysteries, but now have scientific explanations. The more we learn about the universe, the less room there is for supernatural explanations. Evolution explains the diversity of life without requiring a creator, and cosmology describes how the universe could have originated without divine intervention. While some argue that science and religion can coexist, naturalism suggests that invoking God is unnecessary. If God exists, we would expect clear evidence of his intervention, but everything observed in nature follows physical laws. Many aspects of the world seem to function exactly as they would if no deity existed. A universe explainable by natural laws alone makes God an unnecessary hypothesis. The argument from the efficacy of prayer. scientific studies on prayer have largely failed to show any consistent effects. If God responds to prayer, we would expect clear, measurable results when believers pray for specific outcomes. However, controlled experiments have found no significant difference between prayed-for individuals and those who were not prayed for. Some argue that God does not want to be tested, but if prayer is effective, its impact should be observable. If God only answers prayers in unpredictable or unverifiable ways, then prayer is indistinguishable from coincidence. The fact that prayers often go unanswered suggests that divine intervention is either rare or non-existent. Believers claim that God answers prayers in mysterious ways, but this makes prayer indistinguishable from random chance. If prayer had real, consistent effects, its power would be evident beyond subjective personal experiences. The problem of hell. A loving and just God would not create a system where people are eternally punished for finite sins. If hell exists, it raises questions about divine justice. How can eternal suffering be a fair punishment for temporary wrongdoings? Many religious traditions teach that non-believers will go to hell, even if they lived moral lives. If someone is born in a non-Christian culture and never hears about Christianity, is it just for them to be condemned? Some argue that hell is separation from God rather than literal torture, but any eternal punishment for finite sins seems excessive. A truly just God would offer infinite chances for redemption, rather than eternal damnation. The concept of hell appears more like a human invention used for social control than a divinely just system. The existence of hell contradicts the idea of a loving, merciful God. The problem of imperfect design. The natural world contains many flaws that seem inconsistent with an intelligent designer. The human body, for instance, has unnecessary organs like the appendix, birth defects, and a backward-wired retina, suggesting an evolutionary rather than divine origin. If God is all-powerful and all-knowing, why create a world full of genetic disorders, natural disasters, and suffering? Many species have gone extinct due to poor biological adaptations, which does not align with the idea of perfect creation. Some argue that suffering and imperfections are part of God's plan, but this raises the question of why an omnipotent being would create a flawed world. The existence of parasites, predation, and disease suggests an indifferent natural process rather than intelligent design. Evolution explains life's complexity through gradual change rather than divine intervention. If an all-powerful designer existed, we would expect a world with far fewer flaws. The argument from lack of evidence. If God exists, there should be clear, undeniable evidence of his presence. Instead, belief in God often relies on personal experiences, ancient texts, and faith rather than objective proof. The universe appears to function according to physical laws without requiring supernatural intervention. While many claim religious experiences, these vary greatly and often reflect cultural conditioning. If God regularly performed miracles or left undeniable traces of his existence, skepticism would not be so widespread. The burden of proof lies on those making the claim, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. A lack of empirical proof suggests that belief in God is more likely a human construct than a reality. In the absence of verifiable evidence, the most reasonable conclusion is that God does not exist. This channel achieved monetization naturally within 4 months, but with the right approach, you could hit this milestone in just 30 days. For more information, take a look at the description or the pinned comment. If you enjoyed this video, you won't want to miss the next one, where we explore death ceremonies across major religions. From ancient traditions to modern rituals, we'll uncover how different faiths honor the departed and what their beliefs say about the afterlife. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it.